Welcome to AI History of Western Philosophy. Before we dive into today's deep exploration, just a quick note about what we're actually doing here. AI, much like this very podcast, can sometimes, hallucinate. It can present ideas and connections as if they're solid fact. And in a curious way, philosophy itself has perhaps always done something a bit similar. It performs a kind of authority over reality, shaping how we understand it, building these huge systems that claim to represent the ultimate truth. So this podcast is really an experiment. We're trying to explore that connection. We're relinquishing all claim to ultimate authority right from the start. This isn't a lecture, definitely no replacement for reading the primary text yourself. Our goal is simply to generate some new ideas, maybe spark your curiosity, and definitely point you towards the original sources that, underpin these really profound insights. Okay, so let's unpack this for you. Imagine, just for a moment, trying to explain how anything genuinely new comes into being, how change happens in a world where logic seems to dictate that nothing can fundamentally change, that something just can't appear out of nothing. That's the ancient philosophical puzzle we're tackling today. It's a conundrum that stretched all the way from 5th century BCE Greece right up to 20th century France. We're going on a fascinating deep dive into these unexpected, almost uncanny parallels between two really major figures. Anaxagoras of Clazomenae, an ancient Greek, and the radical 20th century French thinker Gilles Deleuze.
Yeah, it's truly fascinating when you put them side by side, because despite the millennia separating them, both of these thinkers grappled with a remarkably similar, really fundamental challenge. They both wanted to explain the world we perceive, this vibrant, diverse, ever-changing world of growth, decay, birth, transformation, all of that. But they wanted to do it without resorting to the idea that, entirely new substances just spontaneously appear out of thin air, out of nowhere. They each developed these incredibly sophisticated, though, vastly different ways to think about becoming, about process and change, as opposed to just static, unchanging being.
Right. So our mission today really is to explore their shared kind of profound intuition, which is that the differences we see all around us, all the distinct qualities, the varied forms, the individuals, they don't just magically pop into existence from absolute nothingness. Instead, they arise from variations in concentration maybe, or proportion, or what we'll eventually call intensity within something that already exists.
Exactly. It's kind of a shortcut, in a way, to understanding some profoundly complex ideas about the very fabric of reality itself.
And it helps us see how these seemingly disparate philosophical problems just echo across history, doesn't it?
It really does. The same questions keep cropping up.
Okay, so section 1. The Eleatic challenge why change was such a problem. To truly appreciate the sheer ingenuity of Anaxagoras, and even to fully grasp the radical ambition of someone like Deleuze later on, you absolutely need to understand the philosophical earthquake caused by Parmenides of Elea. This is early 5th century BCE. He wasn't just another thinker speculating about, what the world's made of, like the Ionians before him. Parmenides fundamentally changed the game. He boldly asserted that logic, pure reason, trumps everything your senses tell you.
Which was a huge step. A radical departure.
Totally. It was this bold claim that the world as we perceive it might be completely misleading, like a grand illusion. He wasn't just asking what the world was made of, but how we could even coherently think about it at all.
Right. And his arguments were so powerful, so logically rigorous, they basically set the terms for philosophical debate for centuries. Every major thinker after him had to respond somehow to Parmenides' daunting conclusions.
Yeah, you couldn't just ignore him.
No way.
Yeah.
And this raised an absolutely critical, unavoidable question for anyone doing philosophy. What happens when logical deduction, when pure, seemingly unassailable reason leads you to conclusions that directly contradict our everyday, undeniable experience? Our experience of a changing, diverse world. Parmenides' argument, which he laid out in his poem On Nature, it forced philosophers to confront the very nature of reality, of existence, and change itself. He wasn't just offering an opinion, He claimed he was revealing the absolute truth.
Only through reason.
Only through the most rigorous application of pure reason, completely bypassing the, as he saw it, deceptive, unreliable veil of the senses. This wasn't just another philosophical debate. It was an existential challenge. If Parmenides was right, then so much of what we experience as real, solid changing was basically nothing more than an elaborate illusion.
So in his poem, he laid out these two distinct ways of inquiry. The first one, the way of truth, sounds almost simple, undeniable, really. That it is and that it cannot not be. It's about what truly exists, what being is, and that it can't just cease to exist. That's the path of being. The other path, which he calls wholly without report, is to think that it is not and that it must not be. trying to think about non-being.
And he presented these as the only two options for thought, for any real inquiry. But he argued only one was actually valid.
Right, because that second path, the one trying to think about what is not, is for Parmenides just utterly impossible, logically incoherent.
Completely impossible. You simply cannot truly think or speak about what is not, because, well, by definition, it isn't. To even try to conceive of non-being, to give it any attributes, any place in reality, it's a logical absurdity for him, a contradiction in terms. It's his fundamental axiom, being is, non-being is not. And this seemingly straightforward premise, this single prohibition against non-being, becomes the engine for this devastating logical argument. It just dismantles every common sense notion we have about change and multiplicity with relentless precision.
It's like you can't describe an empty space as having properties because it's defined by absence.
Exactly. Non-being has no properties because it is not.
And here's where it gets really wild, where the argument just explodes. From that single prohibition, the impossibility of non-being Parmenides deduced the entire nature of what is to eon. Think about it logically. If something cannot possibly come from nothing, from non-being,
then it must have always existed.
Right, so it must be ungenerated and indestructible. It's eternal, no beginning, no end. It just is, timelessly.
And it doesn't stop there. If it exists everywhere, and there's no such thing as empty space, because empty space would be non-being, which is impossible.
Then what is must be a continuous plenum, completely full.
Completely full. And if it's full, where can it go? Nowhere. So it must be motionless. It occupies all space, a continuous, seamless whole. Movement implies moving into non-being, which can't happen.
And if it can't be separated by a void again, because a void is non-being,
then it must be indivisible, a continuous whole. It can't have distinct parts separated by nothingness. So no separate pieces, no internal divisions, no distinctions within what is.
It's just one seamless, undifferentiated unity.
The conclusion is just mind-bending. True reality, revealed by pure reason alone, is a single, eternal, indivisible, motionless, uniform plenum. He describes it as perfected from every side, like the bulk of a well-rounded globe.
Like a perfect sphere of pure existence. No birth, death, movement, difference, nothing. Just pure, unchanging being.
It's a stark picture, almost unlivable, but he believed logic demanded it.
And this conclusion was, well, an existential threat, right? An absolute crisis for the earlier Ionian natural philosophy.
Absolutely. Thinkers like Thales with water and Anaximenes with air condensing and rarefying, their whole approach relied on processes of change. Parmenides basically argued any such process, like air becoming water, involves becoming what it was not, which means passing from non-being to being.
Which he already proved is impossible.
Exactly. So condensation, rarefaction, any transformation illusions, they cannot occur in true reality.
So the world we live in, the world of birth, death, movement, change. The world you and I experience every single day through our senses.
Dismissed, just opinion, Doxa. A confused path taken by mortals who don't grasp the true, unchanging nature of being. Our perceptions, unreliable, superficial appearances obscuring the static truth.
Everything we thought was real, just an illusion, according to him.
Which raised the absolutely critical question for everyone who came after. How do you account for the appearance of change, for the undeniable reality of our lived experience, while still respecting Parmenides' logic?
You couldn't just ignore his arguments. They were too strong.
Precisely. Philosophers like Empedocles, and importantly for us, Anaxagoras, couldn't just assert the reality of the world anymore. They were forced to save the phenomena. They had to build these incredibly complex, ingenious metaphysical frameworks where change could be explained without absolute creation or destruction. Without that forbidden passage from non-being to being, it was a serious intellectual tightrope walk.
And it's right into this intellectual pressure cooker that Anaxagoras steps. His entire system, with its incredibly famous and, let's be honest, deeply counterintuitive doctrine that everything contains a portion of everything else. It has to be seen as a direct, sophisticated, and really deeply consequential answer to Parmenides. He accepted the core challenge, nothing from nothing. But instead of dismissing our world, he tried to find a way to validate its diversity and change within those logical limits.
He wasn't just adding another theory. He was trying to re-architect reality itself.
Okay, section 2. Anaxagoras' ingenious solution. Mixture and mind. So Anaxagoras, as we said, accepts Parmenides' premise. Nothing comes from what is not. He gets that. If something totally new just popped into existence, it breaks the rule. But instead of dismissing the world, he completely reconceptualizes its structure. For him, change isn't transformation in the sense of, say, water becoming air. It's more like recombination, redistribution.
Exactly. Of eternal, ungenerated ingredients that are already present, just maybe latently, hidden within everything. It's a subtle but really crucial shift from creation ex nihilo to rearrangement of what's already there.
And the cornerstone of this whole thing is homo homoeria, right? Famously put as, in everything there is a share of everything.
Yes, that's his direct hit back at the Parmenidean problem.
Yeah.
Anaxagoras asks this very practical question. How could hair come to be out of not hair and flesh out of not flesh? And the implicit answer given Parmenides is, it can't. If hair appears when you eat food, it must have somehow already been in the food in some form, however tiny. Otherwise, you're back to magic, something from nothing.
And his solution is brilliant in its, well, almost tangibility. Hair, flesh, bone, every substance already exists in tiny, tiny amounts within the food we eat. So when you eat bread, you're not magically turning bread stuff into bone stuff. Growth isn't alchemy.
No, it's more like extraction. Your body is just drawing out these pre-existing bits, these infinitesimally small, ungenerated seeds or portions from what you consume and making them dominant, making them manifest.
Like sifting, separating out grains that were already mixed in.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Or picking out the peanuts from a jar of mixed nuts. The peanuts were already there. You're just isolating them, bringing them to the forefront.
And this everything and everything principle applies universally, across the whole cosmos.
That's his claim. He posited that the universe began as this primordial mixture, the migma. Not just a mix of a few elements, but an infinite, totally undifferentiated plenum where all things were together. Imagine this swirling soup containing not just earth, air, fire, water, but everything. This mixture held what he called seeds, spermata, tiny, unchangeable fragments of every distinct substance imaginable. Hot, cold, wet, dry, flesh, bone, gold, earth, sky, everything.
All latent, all mixed together from the start.
Exactly. A universe pregnant with all possibilities.
And the key logical part, the thing that makes it really work, is infinite divisibility.
Yes. He says, for neither is there a least of what is small, but there is always a less. Meaning you can never, ever isolate a perfectly pure bit of anything. No matter how small you go, a portion of every other thing remains within it. Even the tiniest conceptual fragment of gold still contains infinitesimal traces of flesh, bone, air, everything else interwoven.
So you can never get pure gold.
Never truly pure. Change, then, is just the mixing, suncrisis, and separating diakrisis of these eternal seeds, making certain elements more prominent, more manifest in a specific local mixture. It's like a perpetual cosmic remix.
Okay, but then the obvious question, if everything is in everything, how do we tell things apart? How is gold different from flesh? If my hand contains seeds of bone and gold and air, what makes it my hand?
Right. And Anaxagoras' revolutionary answer is all about predominance. An object's identity, what we perceive it to be, is determined by whichever ingredient is most predominant or most manifestly present in its particular local mixture. It's not about purity, it's about proportion. Statistical majority, almost.
He says, each is and was most manifestly those things of which there is most in it. That's the key phrase, isn't it?
Absolutely crucial. So gold is gold not because it's pure gold atoms, but because in its local blend, the gold seeds just vastly outnumber the seeds of flesh, bone, water, etc. Every single object is like a mini cosmos, a complex ratio, a specific blend of all substances. A rock is mostly earth seeds, sure, but it still has those latent traces of bone and hair deep within, theoretically. Identity emerges from the dominant ingredient.
So this completely replaces the idea of absolute qualitative difference, A is not B, with something relative quantitative.
Exactly. Difference becomes a matter of concentration, proportion.
Yeah.
Some scholars call it density, like a non-extensional property describing how present an ingredient is, how manifest it is. It suggests this thorough interpenetration of ingredients, multiple substances co-occupying the same space, just with varying degrees of intensity or manifestation. They're blended, interwoven.
Like different colors of paint mixed together, but maybe one color is stronger in one area.
That's a decent way to think about it. The qualities bleed into each other rather than being totally distinct. It's a gradient.
So you get this idea of a continuous field where things sort of emerge or recede based on their relative strength or density.
Yes, which makes it a fundamentally intensive ontology in a way. Difference isn't a hard boundary. It's a gradient within a continuous whole. It's a striking anticipation of much later ideas.
But this primordial mixture, even with all the ingredients, it lacked something, right? A motor?
It lacked a driving force, yes. In its initial state, it was motionless, undifferentiated. static chaos. To get the world formation going, to separate and organize these infinite seeds, Anaxagoras introduced a unique principle, mind, or nous.
The intelligence.
The intelligence. And this was a big step beyond his predecessors, who often relied on matter itself having inherent properties to cause change. Anaxagoras saw the need for something external.
And nous is the big exception to his everything and everything rule.
The only exception. It's not mixed with anything else. It's unlimited and self-ruling, the most rarefied of all things and the purest. He's very clear. If it were mixed, its power to rule and order would be compromised. It has to be pure, transcendent, unadulterated.
Which makes it almost divine in his system.
Very much so. A principle of pure intellect standing apart.
And its job is to start things moving, like a cosmic rotation.
Exactly. It initiates and governs this massive cosmic rotation or vortex, the perichoresis. It starts small, then expands, drawing more of the magma into its whirl. And the motion itself causes the separating off of ingredients, probably through a kind of mechanical sorting based on densities. Think of it, giant centrifuge. Dense stuff goes one way, rare stuff another.
But it's not just a blind force. Nous has knowledge.
Yes, it's described as having all knowledge in regard to everything and arranging everything past, present, and future. It's not random. It's a transcendent, external, intelligent principle acting with purpose, with a plan. It stands apart from the material chaos and imposes order from the outside. The prime mover, the cosmic architect.
So Anaxagoras pulls it off. He saves the phenomena from Parmenides. He explains change without breaking the nothing from nothing rule.
He does, by positing this eternal mix where difference is just proportion. But, and this is crucial, he does it by introducing a fundamental dualism. The intelligent, ordering cause, nous, and the passive material mixture it acts upon. The world isn't self-organizing in his view. It needs that external intelligence to impose order. And that sets up a huge philosophical choice that echoes down the centuries.
Right, which takes us neatly after 2.5 millennia to Gilles Deleuze, Section 3, Deleuze's radical ontology, difference in itself. So Deleuze, difference in repetition, 1968, a monumental effort, you said, to think difference independently of identity.
Totally radical, because traditional metaphysics, Plato, Aristotle, right through to Hegel, always saw difference as secondary, often negative, just the relation between two things that are already self-identical. A is different from B because A is A and B is B. Difference was just the gap between them.
Not the primary force.
Never the primary creative force. Deleuze wanted a new ontology where difference is the primary, positive, genetic principle of all reality, which meant tearing down what he called the image of thought.
The old way of thinking.
Yeah, the way philosophy got trapped, he thought, in thinking about concepts as static representations of static objects, instead of understanding the dynamic processes that bring both objects and concepts into being. He wanted to flip the script, uncover the active, productive nature of difference itself.
So he goes after the 4 pillars of reason: identity, opposition, analogy, resemblance.
He argues they all hide or erase difference in itself. They reduce pure dynamic difference to just a negative space between pre-existing identicals. When we say this is different from that, we're already assuming this and that are stable things. Deleuze wants the difference before identity solidifies, the difference that produces identity.
Not just compares them.
Exactly. His goal was explicitly a generalized anti-Hegelianism, replacing Hegel's engine of contradiction, that negative dialectic, with difference's positive creative force. To do that, philosophy had to stop just representing the world as it already is and grasp the real process of its genesis, how it comes to be, how it unfolds.
Okay, and central to this is his distinction between the virtual and the actual. And you stressed, don't confuse this with possible versus real.
Absolutely vital. The possible, for many philosophers, is just like a blueprint waiting to be built. It's preformed, adds nothing genuinely new when it becomes real. Its identity is already set. The virtual, for Deleuze, is completely different. It's fully real, but not yet actual. It's not hazy potential. It's a plane of ideas or multiplicities. But these aren't transcendent Platonic forms. They're immanent systems of differential relations and singularities.
Immanent
Meaning within reality, not in some separate higher realm. Think of the virtual as this dynamic, structured field of pure potential, teeming with forces and relations that are real in themselves, even if they haven't taken concrete form yet. It's the dynamic problem that reality is constantly solving.
And he uses the math analogy, dx, the differential.
Right. Just like dx defines a curve's structure without being any specific point on the curve, the virtual is this problematic field, It's structured, but still undetermined. It contains the genetic conditions, the underlying rules for all actual things. It's the dynamic blueprint, the problem space from which solutions, actual things, are creatively invented, not just revealed.
Okay, so that's the virtual. The actual, then, is just the world we see.
The actual is the domain of constituted things, yeah.
Yeah.
Objects with extensive properties, size, shape, volume, and specific qualities, color, temperature, the world of discrete, identifiable things we experience. Actualization is the process, the dynamic unfolding, from the virtual to the actual. And crucially, the actual doesn't just resemble the virtual it came from, just like a solution doesn't look like the mathematical problem it solves.
Right.
The actual is the solution to the virtual's differential field. It's a creative, often unpredictable unfolding, a genuine innovation, not just making a pre-existing possibility real.
So we have the virtual pure relations and the actual concrete things. What's the link? The engine driving the virtual into the actual.
For Deleuze, it's intensity. This, he argues, is difference in its pure state, the raw, undifferentiated force that generates all other differences. It's not something extensive you can divide easily.
Like length. Half a meter is still a length.
Exactly. Extensive properties like length can be divided without changing their basic nature. Intensive properties can't. You can't have half a temperature or half a pressure in the same way. Dividing an intensive quantity forces a qualitative change.
Like water freezing, if you have its temperature, it becomes ice, a different state.
Precisely. Temperature, pressure, speed, even things like pain or joy. They're intensive magnitudes expressing pure, non-divisible difference. They don't just add up. They produce effects, transformations, new states.
So intensity becomes the genetic principle, the engine of coming into being.
Yes. Actualization is an intensive process. The virtual field of differential relations gets embodied in these intensive processes, which then explicate or unfold themselves into the extensive qualitative world we experience. Intensity is the bridge.
The key intermediary.
It's the force of individuation, the dynamic process where pre-individual singularities in the virtual field coalesce and transform into an actual individual, a stable being. It's the becoming that precedes being, the dynamic disequilibrium that gives rise to stable forms.
Like boiling water creating bubbles and steam new forms not pre-existing in the water.
Perfect example. Because intensity is already difference, it provides the motor for his own differentiation. This lets Deleuze build a theory of genesis that's entirely immanent. Difference doesn't need an external push. It's the internal, unequal force that produces being in all its diversity. A universe building itself from within.
Okay, wow. So section 4, a critical comparison. Shared logic, divergent paths. Let's bring Anaxagoras and Deleuze face to face now. You said there's a profound structural parallel here, right? Both trying to get a differentiated world from a unified ground. Both have a sort of two-tiered reality.
At a very general level, yes. Both are tackling that classic problem of the one and the many. How does unity give rise to diversity? Anaxagoras starts with the concrete unity of the migma, where all things were together. Diversity comes from changing the ratios, the concentrations of things already latently present. Difference results from separation and aggregation, making certain ingredients predominant. The one, mixture, yields the many, differentiated world, through rearrangement.
And Deleuze also starts with a kind of unity being as univocal, meaning it's said in a single sense. But the diversity of beings, the many, arises from the internal play of difference itself, actualized as varying intensities. So the virtual plane is his underlying one, and the actual world is the many emerging creatively from it.
For both, then, the perceived world isn't just discrete, separate substances popping into existence. It's an expression of underlying differential relations, degrees of presence. Anaxagoras' world is a field of varying preponderances. Deleuze's is a field of varying intensities. The world is a continuum where differences are gradients, not hard breaks.
And that parallel lets us reread Anaxagoras in a new light, doesn't it? His density or concentration model. It's like a physical precursor to intensity.
It really is. The density of gold in Anaxagoras' mixture, where it dominates, but is still mixed with everything else, functions like an intensive property. You can't just have the gold concentration without potentially changing the mixture's dominant character entirely. It becomes something else.
It's a tangible way to grasp Deleuze's more abstract idea of non-extensive quantity generating extensive effects. And Anaxagoras almost becomes an allegory for actualization.
But, and this is the crucial point, this is where they fundamentally diverge. Anaxagoras' seeds are qualitatively determined even when hidden. A seed of flesh is already infinitesimally flesh. Bone is bone. Gold is gold. These are pre-given qualities, just waiting to manifest.
His fixture is made of micro-qualities.
Exactly. Genesis for him is about making these pre-existing qualities manifest. It's innovative, but still tied to a logic of identity.
Yeah.
Flesh comes from flesh. It explains how things become more manifest, but not how genuinely new qualities arise.
Whereas Deleuze's virtual elements are radically pre-qualitative, pre-individual. They aren't tiny things waiting. They're pure relations, ideas as systems of differentials, dx, topological singularities, abstract dynamic systems of forces.
Right. Quality and identity are pre-given for Deleuze. They're results, products of the intensive actualization process. They emerge from the dynamic interactions they are created.
So, Deleuze's example of the eye, it's not formed by collecting tiny eye parts, Anaxagoras style.
No. The I emerges as the actualized solution to the virtual problem of light and vision. The virtual is defined by differential relations between light and tissue, and the actual I is the creative integration, the invention, that solves that problem. The solution doesn't resemble the problem, it's genuine novelty.
So, Anaxagoras gives us a kind of chemistry of latent qualities rearranging existing bits. Deleuze offers a mathematics of pure relations, inventing entirely new patterns from dynamic rules.
That's a good way to put it. And this difference in elements leads to a difference in the genetic process itself. Anaxagoras' cosmic vortex, started by the external nous, is basically mechanical sorting, like a centrifuge separating based on density. It's intelligent design, but the mechanism is quite linear and deterministic.
Things are put in order by nous, a top-down process.
Exactly. Whereas Deleuze's concept of individuation, drawing on Simondon, is much more dynamic. It's self-organization, happening in a pre-individual field full of potential energy. Individuation is a drama of forces, an event of resonance, where a system resolves internal tensions by inventing a new dimension of being, a new stable form.
Like the embryo example, not a mini-person expanding, but a field of intensive gradients organizing itself into an organism.
Precisely. In Deleuze's world, things are inventing their own order, constantly producing novelty from within through immanent forces. It's bottom-up emergence, not top-down design.
Okay, section 5. Implications and the enduring divide. Transcendence versus immanence.
Reading Anaxagoras through Deleuze really highlights the sophistication there, doesn't it? Everything and everything isn't naive. It's like a rigorous attempt to model a virtual-like field governed by intensive properties. His preponderance anticipates difference as degree. It rescues him from just being a historical footnote.
And conversely, reading Deleuze through Anaxagoras gives historical depth. The project of affirming difference isn't just a modern thing. It's a response to that fundamental Parmenidean problem from the dawn of philosophy. Anaxagoras shows that saving the phenomena requires really complex thinking about substance, mixture, causality. It deepens our understanding of Deleuze's project.
But, as we said, the analogy breaks down completely at the causal principle. Anaxagoras' nous. That's the absolute archetype of a transcendent principle. Pure, unmixed intelligence, standing outside and above the material world it organizes. It acts according to a plan, bringing order to passive chaos. Superior, separate.
And that is exactly the image of thought Deleuze wanted to demolish, that model of creation based on an external, sovereign authority, the theological or royal paradigm where order is imposed from on high. Deleuze saw it as limiting, unable to account for real novelty.
Absolutely. Yeah. His entire philosophy, by contrast, is the construction of this radical plane of immanence. A conceptual surface with no higher or external principle, no God, no Platonic forms, no Kantian subject imposing order. Thought and being unfold on a single plane. Order isn't imposed, it's emergent.
Generated from within.
Generated from the immanent, self-organizing dynamics of forces and intensities. A continuous process. No outside choreographer. The dance makes itself.
So Genesis for Deleuze isn't executing a plan, but a creative counter-actualization, an event with irreducible novelty. New is vertical, hierarchical. The plane of immanence is horizontal, rhizomatic self-organization.
Let's quickly summarize those key divergences again. Primordial state. Anaxagoras has the concrete mixture, latent qualities. Deleuze has the abstract, virtual, pure relations.
The nature of difference.
Yeah.
Anaxagoras. Preponderance concentration. Quantitative ratio of latent qualities, Deleuze. Intensity, positive, non-extensive, pre-qualitative force.
Principle of Genesis,
Yeah.
Anaxagoras. New transcendent external intelligence, Deleuze.
Self-actualization.
Immanent individuation.
Status of elements, Anaxagoras. Seeds, latent but determined qualities, Deleuze. differential relations, purely relational pre-qualitative.
Relation to identity.
Yeah.
Anaxagoras. Identity from statistical predominance. Deleuze. Difference is primary. Identity is a secondary effect.
And the metaphysical model. Anaxagoras, transcendent organization. Deleuze, immanent self-organization. Big difference.
Huge. And the comparison really highlights this. It shows you can have a sophisticated, intensive model of difference, like Anaxagoras, and still rely on a transcendent cause. He's at the threshold, looking towards immanence with his mixtures and proportions, but pulls back to the security of nous, the external architect. His world is organized.
While Deleuze crosses that threshold completely, commits fully to a world with no outside, his philosophy is this systematic effort to show order emerging without transcendence. His world creates itself. Order is an ongoing invention from within.
And that ancient divergence, transcendent organization versus immanent self-creation, it remains this central, unresolved tension in metaphysics, doesn't it? It frames the fundamental question. How does anything new come into being? Does order need an external source, or can it truly emerge spontaneously from within? That question shakes how we see everything.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean for you listening? We've journeyed through how two brilliant minds, millennia apart, tackled this incredibly deep problem of how a diverse, changing world comes to be. They both saw change not as creation from nothing, but as variations within some underlying continuum.
But their ultimate split, the transcendent mind ordering things versus immanent dynamics, self-organizing highlights this profound choice in how we conceptualize reality, knowledge, even our own creativity.
Think about it in your own life. When you create something new, have a new idea. Which model feels more intuitive? Is it like meticulously ordering pre-existing thoughts and materials in Anaxagoras style?
Or is it more like Deleuze's idea, a self-organizing emergence of concepts, connections bubbling up from some deeper, indeterminate, intensive potential?
Maybe it's a bit of both sometimes, a tension we all experience. Well, we hope this episode of AI History of Western Philosophy has sparked some new thoughts and maybe encouraged you to check out the original texts of Anaxagoras and Deleuze for yourself.
They're challenging, but incredibly rewarding.
Until next time, keep diving deep.